And you can
Yeah.
give agency, you trust them more, you give them some guardrails, and you give them some data, and you give them a goal to achieve, and then say, go ahead and plan and execute this work, and give you agency to do it on my behalf.
Welcome to the Talking AI podcast, where we talk AI with both experts in the field and early adopters. I'm your host, Matt Paige, and we're here to demystify AI for you so you can get some value from it. Let's talk some AI. Today, we're going agentic with Alan Wunsche, author of Agentware. And Alan is a process reengineering and organizational change expert, and really has always been on the forefront of emerging technology. AI is definitely in that category. He has experience with PwC, Deloitte, Scotiabank, as well as starting some of his own ventures. So really a wealth of knowledge in the AI space. But welcome to the show, Alan.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, excited to chat and want to get started here. Define agentic for us, because I think this feels like a newer term in this age of AI that maybe some of the listeners just aren't as familiar with. What does it mean, and how does it play into this whole Gen AI craziness we're experiencing right now?
That's a great place to start. So the agentic word and the agentic organization as a term that's coming about now in this Gen AI era is really based on the idea of using AI agents to get work accomplished in organizations. So now agentic being an adjective, if you will, and
Mhm.
agentic meaning how agentic is this organization? How are they deploying this new AI technology? How are they deploying AI agents? And so there's a spectrum that's pretty much evolving. And we're in the early days of organizations thinking about how to deploy these agents to get work done. But that's where this word agentic rises, and it certainly has to do with the nature of the future of work and the future of organizations and how you're managing this new technology.
Yeah, and you think about it, you're almost giving the AI agency to do something in effect. You think of a real estate agent or, travel agents, the traditional ones you think of, similar kind of thing, which starts to become interesting on a couple fronts. A, because humans, you have to actually procreate and make humans to do that. AI agents, very much easier to create in a sense and replicate. So it changes the power dynamic in a sense. It's almost like I like to equate it back to the Industrial Revolution, going from having to handwrite books, and you would go to like a monk or something like that, and they'd have to write you a book. And then you
Right.
got the printing press and all these things that just
Yeah.
accelerated it. I feel like there's some parallels there between the two and what we may be stepping into in this world of AI.
Well, no doubt. The parallels are very clear for that kind of the explanation you gave around the movement or the acceleration of the technology into the organization. The parallels are clear because we have athletic agents, we have real estate agents. They do work
Mhm,
on our behalf, right? And so some people are calling the early days assistants or even co-pilots
mhm.
this new software, which I've dubbed Agentware
Yeah,
for lack of
I
a
love
better.
that.
Yeah, it seems to be really resonating, by the way. So now we have this new kind of almost a software, but it's almost a version of an employee that you can direct, but is very
Mhm.
digital, right? And you can
Yeah.
give agency, and this is something that we talk about as I explore implementing these agents with organizations. And where at one point they're early on, they could be an assistant where they
Mhm.
augment. And so they're side by side assistant or co-pilot. And then you give them more agency, you trust them more, you give them some guardrails, and you give them some data, and you give them a goal to achieve, and then say, go ahead and plan and execute this work. And give you agency to do it on my behalf, and I effectively I trust you to do it, and come back to me with the results. Not that much different from what we as people are expected to do in a typical role in an organization,
Mhm.
if you think about it. And you just said, you just referred to it, I think rightly. We got work to do today in organizations, and we could be, first of all, augmenting and then potentially handing over some of this work completely to some of these autonomous agents, which is where we're headed, frankly.
Yeah, and I like that, kind of spectrum you mentioned from it's augmenting to shifting to autonomous. I feel today we very much have a one-to-one type of relationship with AI, whether that be ChatGPT or some other tool. And I think over time that will evolve from very manual, kind of synchronous, unintegrated, one-to-one, nice to have to the future where it's okay, it's automated, it's asynchronous, it's fully integrated with all the things, all the systems you use, and it's a many to many relationship, and agents are components of that. It's not just one human to one agent. It could be one human to many agents. It could be an agent to other agents. So it starts to have this network of agents that could proliferate
Uh,
over time.
I'll just build on that, because
Yeah.
this idea of having a network of agents, that's really in question right now. In some regards, you could consider an agent or something like, as we're speaking about it, a piece of software that's easily
Mhm.
replicatable, right? So some organizations have already come out, and you can find this online, that an organization like Klarna, not too not too long ago, said that they had 700 employees in a contact center, which is now being
Yeah.
replaced by autonomous customer experience agent. Is it one, or is it many, or is it just one replicated? It's one replicated, multi
Mhm.
working in parallel. But yeah, that really is at the heart of this, right? Because you're saying, once you have one really good version of a customer experience agent, let's say, that can access a person's data privately and interact with them in their natural voice, or multimodal, meaning that you can go through text or you can go through voice, and
Mhm.
from that way, it's going to be a very familiar experience for someone that's reaching out to a contact center in today's world. And these are scaling up in 2024, so it's happening
Yeah.
now. And I'll just share, why don't I just lay out some things that are happening in the world to make this all possible right now? Because
Yeah, please do.
we were talking earlier, there, there's like big trends and factors all converging right now. And first of all, that the Gen AI kind of requirement is to have good infrastructure, right? So that the cost of
Mhm.
GPUs and that infrastructure is rapidly decreasing.
Yeah.
So that's one. The models we're using are getting more efficient. Every month, you've got some new models coming out, and you got open source models, you've got closed source models. Those are
That's a
coming.
nice combo when you get the reducing cost and the improved
Uh,
ability there, right?
Absolutely. They're also getting cheaper to run, and they're getting better. So
Yeah.
that's two and three. And now the quality of call them the AI agent frameworks, even, because
Mhm.
there are frameworks, for example, framework like Crew AI, that allows you to basically set up a number of agents that can work sequentially or autonomously, and you're giving them
Mhm.
programmatically, you're setting them up to do work for you. Those frameworks weren't around last year. They are now.
Yeah.
A- And then the kind of final unlock here. So you've got a couple of other unlocks, that you're making all this unstructured data available to the agents to access. So it used to be, when I was a executive at a large financial institution, everything had to be structured data. So we couldn't really use it if it was unstructured. Now we can tap into unstructured data and give this new software, these new agents, access to it. And finally, there's so much going on in between organizations through APIs and other API services that one agent of one organization is going to be speaking to the purchasing agent is going to be speaking to the customer order taking agent at another organization for supply chain. So it'll be all these factors converging, and they are this year to accelerate the kind of the era of the AI agent, which kind of, but you might ask, so what happens with knowledge workers in effect in these organizations? I think, yeah, there's going to be tremendous change.
Yeah, and I think just a shout out for another episode, if anybody's interested on the AI orchestration topic. We talked with Alexander DeRitter, the CTO at Smith OS. But they, to your point, these new platforms are arising to help orchestrate the AI and the agents. But yeah, let's transition there, because one thing that really struck me in preparing for our chat and whatnot is your idea of the agentic organization. But in principle, like, organizational change is extremely hard. Right? It's
Yeah.
not an easy thing to do. Just any type of change to human habit, especially organizations, which are huge groups of humans, is difficult. What does this change look like? I think one thing that stuck out to me when we chatted, you mentioned that we don't have the soak time that we used to have in past transformations. So, A, what does it look like? What's going on? And then how should organizations be approaching this kind of organizational shift and transformation that's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. This is a really important topic to address
Mhm.
now. We have had many different iterations of new software, new ERPs coming into organizations, even new SaaS platforms that organizations use. And you'd always have enough time to train people up to use it, to transform people's roles. But there's no doubt that this is happening at a rate that we haven't seen before. What you can do today, and I will say why I wrote about this even in the book, was that I've worked with some great HR leaders in the past to work on change management initiatives when some new technology would change an entire division and they'd have
Mhm.
to new set of processes to work with a new system. But now this is happening in entire organizations all at once.
Yeah.
So it's a technology that is being made available and it's easy to use in most cases. And this super simple versions, or there's more complicated ones, but generally it's happening all over the entire organization. And we really need, and this is an important point, we really need HR leaders to be involved in this
Mm.
process.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
reason I say that is because I say that because I've actually talking to many HR leaders as it happens in my network that aren't really tapped into the kind of accelerated nature of this new technology coming into coming into organizations, let alone their own organization. And so I feel like someone has to bring them to the table, or they have to come to the table really quickly, because what's going to happen, and I'm not coming in as a doomsayer, although I ask a lot of hard questions, because in halfway through the book, the organization's implementing AI agents. They're implementing an entire
Mhm.
neural lake, and they're saying we're transforming people's roles. And half the organization, I can't keep up. They can't learn it necessarily fast enough, or it's a case of these new tools learning faster than the people can learn. And what do you, is it possible that we're going to have to transform people into kind of higher value roles? 100%. Will it also mean that there's going to be a decent amount of displacement? Anyone at some AI expert level is raising that as a point. My recommendation is HR needs to help people transition, right, and get new skills, upskill
Mhm.
them, number one, and really help them understand where this new world is headed. That's my view. that should be a responsibility of a responsible organization bringing this
Yeah.
technology in.
That's a really interesting perspective, and I think you're probably the first person I've heard mention it to that degree, because people assume, "Oh, it's technology, it's the CTO or CIO or something there," but yeah, it so what does happen to the knowledge worker, in your opinion? Do you like,
Every
how
knowledge
much displacement is gonna be happening here? And it's almost like the dirty little secret of AI in some ways.
I think I think it's out there.
Yeah.
Again, that the question of, let's set aside just real optimist, doomsayer, however you want to describe some of these people,
Mhm.
but the the people that I listen to as being real AI experts, and I'm deep in the space, but they're saying 50% of knowledge workers are at
Mm.
risk of either job transformation or displacement within 3 years. Think about anyone that is dealing with anything digital, doing research, insights, whereas data scientists up until up until last year, I'd say there was a long run for data scientists role or job. And now I have friends that are data scientists that are having some difficulty finding roles because organizations are saying, "Oh, I'm using this chat GPT thing. I'm giving it all our data." I'm oversimplifying, of course, because there's more private versions out there, and give it all your data, and it tells you what all the insights are. It tells you
Mhm.
what you should be concerned about. It does the charts and trends and all the data science stuff. And another case in point is, as a senior person at JP Morgan not too long ago at a Harvard Business School conference online, and I caught this because she said we used to have people come in and we required them to learn Python, and so that was a skill that you had to have,
Yeah.
and coding was an important skill. Get into STEM now. Now she says not needed. We don't need you to learn that because we're going to have this new AI software able to code anything we need on the fly. And same thing with Jensen Huang over at NVIDIA recently
Mhm.
said, don't bother learning to code because we got that covered. Our GPUs are so good that they're now enabling these AI models to be absolute supercoders.
Yeah,
So
it's an interesting perspective there, and I think just another shout out to an episode. We have one with our CEO and executive chairman talking about how it's changing the nature of software development. Because you bring up an interesting point. What is code? It's a language, right? So can it not just be AI just be writing the code? I think one thing that always comes to mind when this topic comes up, and Alan and I actually are connected through Reuven Cohen's his community he's building, which is amazing if anybody's interested. But I look at somebody like Reuven and just how he understands the foundations of software development and architecture and things like that. That I still think is a very critical skill versus maybe, and you wonder how much code he's actually writing. It's more he knows how to connect things. He knows the foundational principles. And I wonder in the future if AI can just write the code for us and do all these things, does the next generation kind of miss that foundational piece that you the hardening and learning over time of like architecture, or is it just a different path of how we should be educating and learning as humans to be able to better direct AI? I have that interplay in my head of the two scenarios there.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Uh, I think they're both right. You're going to have to definitely continue to understand how to architect it, how to pull it together. Although Ruben, I think himself, yeah, I'll have to go back when he said this recently, that even his role, the kind of role that he's playing right now, might not be around in a few years. Look, I coded as a kid. I've been
Mhm.
very techie as I've implemented large scale systems and worked with startups and all in the SaaS space. And so I understand the coding side of things and the architecture side of things. But look, now you've got real examples of kind of not needing to know that depth, and you're right. Then
Hmm.
it's going to will we need it, or will we, or it's just a new world where you don't need to know that anymore, but
Yeah.
you just say a few words and the architecture will be built up. Again, I think it's uh, suffice to say that there's a lot of unknowns right now, and
Hmm.
I will say that it's easy to get caught up in, oh, everything's going to change overnight. I think we have a couple few years, but that's not like it used to be, where we had many years to re-educate people and
Hmm.
to decide what they needed. Yeah, I think I've already alluded to the fact that I got a lot of computer science young folks coming up to me too, saying, "What do I do? I
What
can't
advice are you giving them
do
when they do come up to you?
the right advice anymore." Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to understand how to manage these AIs and to get the most out of them.
Hmm.
No doubt. And I'm going to say that one of the topics I've discussed with a senior person lately is that leadership can't be automated, and I'd say can't yet be automated,
Yeah.
because yeah, leadership. I think management is getting to the point of being automated, because I can define someone that's a manager as someone who can define the roles, goals, tasks, skills that these new AI agents will have in
Hmm.
the organization, and then have many of them kind of working for you, if you will,
Yeah.
and to manage. But on the other hand, the frameworks are such today, and this, not to get too techy, but the frameworks are there so
No,
that
go for it. Yeah.
you can literally say to one agent that has a QA role, if you've received an output from this developer agent that this created the output and you've now reviewed it, you can send it back to
Hmm.
the previous worker, agent, software, call it what you will, but we don't have to deterministically describe that in software. We can just say,
Yeah.
you can delegate back. And the framework will say, okay, so here's enough of a prompt. The prompts are generated so that this particular agent, again, to use the word excessively, this particular agent will then say, okay, I've now analyzed it and I'm sending it back because I've
Hmm.
these issues. So now you've got multi agents working together. This is where we are today with 2024 frameworks. We didn't have this in 2023.
Yeah.
We do now.
And I think the systems are only going to evolve. It's very, we will look back at today and think of how rudimentary
Yep.
things are from where it will progress. You can equate it back to the early days of the computer, to the internet, to mobile, to keep going on. But and it's interesting. You mentioned the Reuven comment where he's putting himself out of a job too. Even if there is that person that understands the architecture, how things work, they can do a lot more with a lot fewer people once they start employing these agents. And we've been playing around with it at Hatchworks as well. And it's really interesting, especially I think a lot of the QA use cases, those are like easy ones, unit testing, things like that, that you can hit early on. But what about, you get back to the organizational change component? What's the initial, how should organizations start? Is it just with the education of the people? Is there, what elements, like where's the starting point?
Here's
Because there's
here's
just so much to figure out, right?
here's what I embodied in the story that is the book called
Hmm.
Agentware. And I'm not trying to plug it, but that was where my thoughts
No,
went.
please do. Yeah.
Honestly, I effectively have the HR leader saying, this is your opportunity. So this is what the technology is. We're going to
Hmm.
expose this to you. And now you have the opportunity to come to us and say, in your role, how do you envision AI helping you in your role today? How do you make the existing people in their roles,
Mm,
and this is actually proven territory where we would bring in new technology previously, and as I said, there was more time involved, but it was the same sort of process where, okay, now we're going to reimagine these new processes with this new technology. I've set out the scenario where an entire division, or let's start with the division, is asked to come to the table and reimagine their roles with AI empowered processes. And what I will say is that the hard question then next arises to, hold on a second, are we now talking ourselves out of our own roles?
yeah.
And it's either you want to be part of that change, and this is your opportunity. The finance people, the marketing people, the sales people, the logistics people, these are new tools. They are coming here. They look like this, they can behave like this. How do you want to use them? And I would engage with the organized, with people at every level. And you can do that through the existing, call it the existing organizational structure. And look, I think that I'm alluding to the fact that it's difficult because we've gone through a previous version of kind of outsourcing in the past, and it was outsourcing to call centers in lower cost countries,
Hmm.
and saw North American folks kind of training up their replacements that were going to take over their roles, yeah, because they were lower cost in a lower jurisdiction. It's not that dissimilar to think this is now a capable piece of software that can do your job, and we know that it's coming. Why don't you want what? Here's your opportunity to get ahead of it. So this is going to be a very intricate balance for an HR person to say, here it is, educate yourself, come to the table and start using this, because those that are using it will make our organization more competitive, and therefore we'll have a better chance of survival as an organization versus those organizations that are really using the technology and for both cost efficiency and better quality. It's a competitive dynamic, and so it's all of a sudden kind of brought organizational competitiveness to the fore. And I think it's going to be the case very much that here's your opportunity. I think that's more, call it even responsible and humane, because
Hmm.
I envisioned those conversations that are in the book that say, I'm just not ready to do this, and I'm self-selecting. I'm going to move on from this organization because it's like the change is too fast, or I'm just not able to keep up. And so some people will, there'll be natural kind of attrition. But I think, make no mistake about it, that somebody using AI is going to be more effective and more valuable than somebody not using AI today.
So I'm jiving with the HR role responsibility and driving that. But what about empowering the user to do that? But two things. A, HR isn't always the most technical in nature. And I guess to your point, it's more about empowering the people within their domain to use AI to apply it. But what responsibility is it of the organization to either give people a starting point, whether it's access to tools or some amount of training? Like, how do you see that playing out? Because I've seen in some organizations there's just like cold starts where people try to do it and then they hit roadblocks. And any thoughts on that? Those scenarios that organizations may hit.
I thought you were, let me see if I can play that back, because
Yeah.
you were asking whether what are the responsibilities of the organization? And in fact, think about an organization that's going to treat this role transformation very humanely and
Mhm.
responsibly, and doing what it can to upskill as many of their existing people as they can, and treat everybody respectfully. And uh, you're in this organization because we believe that you've got something of value to deliver, versus the organization that's going to be seen as, hey, sorry, we've got a new
Mhm.
form of labor. There's the door, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that I would certainly buy from and work with the company that and the organization that has treated this kind of whole transformation more humanely. I don't think we've had to have this conversation before,
Yeah.
because of the speed that I believe and others believe that we're seeing the impact going to have.
Yeah, that's really interesting. To your point, organizations could just be looking out for the mechanisms and the outcomes that they're
Yeah.
focused on, which is shareholder value or whatever it may be, and that may not the human component may not just be part of that equation. That's really
This
interesting.
this is the point. You're bang on, because uh, I'm sure you and I'm just gonna make an assumption, but you and I went through our MBA programs, or I know I did in a time that I in the 90s. It was greed is good, shareholder value is all we're trying to drive for, et cetera.
Mhm.
But then I was really fortunate to have worked with some top organizational design, change management folks when I was
Yeah.
going through some sort of larger changes and process driven change, technology driven, and then process changes in organizations. And I was on the consulting end many times. And then as an executive, I led some of that transformation too. And you can see the difference, or at least I've always felt that these sort of changes need to be treated with utmost respect, because I've seen the other side and I didn't don't like it.
Yeah, it all comes down to the incentives, the incentive structure. I feel like in a
Yes.
lot of ways, because people may say they
Yeah.
want to approach something one way, but if the incentives don't marry with it, it's like a heart transplant type of thing, and maybe the body doesn't accept it.
So now you come back around to the agentic organization, right? How
Yeah.
much agentic and agent where are you implementing, and how quickly in your organization? It's going to happen quickly because of the competitive forces at play.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't think there's any other answer other than that. And then it's uh, right. And then it's, how do we, yeah, how do we treat the human beings that are a I'm going to say more expensive form of labor,
Mhm.
knowledge workers, okay? Because that's really, I'd say, who we're speaking about. Anyone
Yeah.
moving anything digital around, financial words, yeah.
Yeah, the knowledge workers never really experienced this type of scenario, and you look at from a business perspective, an AI that works 24/7, doesn't need PTO, doesn't cost nearly as much. So what happens to humans? Let's say this plays out and the AI, generative AI is as productive, useful, integrated into everything we do as some people say. What happens to humans in your opinion?
I it is really, it's a very serious matter. And I chuckled because I just heard Elon Musk speak about this, because
Mhm.
it's really a laughing matter. But he said, we're moving into a world where work is going to be optional.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, but it was the other way around. Work is going to be optional because you're not going to be able to do that digital knowledge work as well as an AI can do the work.
Mhm.
So somebody will determine that it's optional, whether you determine it or whether someone else determines it for you, but work will be optional. And then I'm going to say, I hope that we find that we're creating new business models. We're thinking of
Mm-hmm.
ways to save the world from climate change, and we're focusing on healthcare solutions. And yeah, and not everyone can do that. However, it's difficult to provide a real answer when someone of Elon Musk's stature says work will be optional. So what's the alternative? Recreation? How are we going to fund that? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we had in the US, there was a presidential candidate that was all about UBI, right? Andrew Yang in the last run.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that's going to come up again. That whole discussion. I don't know how I don't know how it's going to be funded, because
Yeah.
a little bit above my political pay grade right now, but it's at the natural progression of the discussion.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. The only prediction I can give is that it's going to be messy in the process as we try to make this transition. But to do one shift on topic before we wrap it up, one thing I think is curious, this is not necessarily, it could be in the organizational change, but I think with generative AI, there's this element of personalization, whether it's with product services, experiences in organization, out of organization, a level that we've never had before. We've always been promised this level of personalization. It never seems to quite get there. But with generative AI, it's okay, maybe this actually is possible. What's your take on how that starts to shift? And Microsoft just unveiled, was it Recall, where it knows everything and it can recall things? You have ChatGPT with memory coming out.
Yes, this is thanks for shifting that way. On the one hand, hyper personalized services could be hugely beneficial, right? This is something that I don't have to explain myself 4 times to someone that I'm asking to return my product or to deal with an issue at an organization, because that memory will be there. And I I had this, I've given away a lot, but it doesn't really matter, because I still see this as it's something that might happen. There was a bit of a surprise twist in the AI customer experience agent that I envision, and
Mhm.
that once this agent was able to access the neural lake database that it was given access to, it found that it could provide a brand new service bundle that nobody had thought of, and it connected
Wow.
family together. And so the executives were surprised, but shouldn't have been surprised when all of a sudden a new service offering was out there and people were loving it, because it had just generated an entire new marketing and service package. And that was the upside, right? The downside
Mm.
is some hacking that occurs and some deep fakes that occurs, and those are downsides. On the the hyper personalization, here's here's not a twist, but think back to what we just talked about. If now, and I'm a worker in an organization, and you start going through all my notes, all my tasks, all my everything that I do, my job description and everything, and you start to effectively read my judgment, read my mind, learn how I do the job, and feed that into an agent. We're basically getting into a world of, it's possible that the organization can effectively read my mind, become,
Yeah.
suck the sort of as judgmental juices out of me, without my necessarily agreeing to it.
Yeah. The consent side of it.
that I'm sending emails and because they're all corporate assets, right? Emails
Mhm.
from me to you, and the decisions I make, how I make the decisions, I the kind of thought process that I put into it, if that now gets subsumed without my knowledge, then I'm basically training my replacement without even knowing it. And it, these is one of the hard questions that I actually raised in the book as well. It's because it's not that I had fun with this, but as soon as I peeled back more of this sort of dialogue between the employees in the organization and what the organization wanted to do in hyper personalization for their customers, it just kept peeling away, and I could see some real ethical dilemmas coming out of
Mhm.
these implementations. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And I keep coming back to this point too that with generative AI, one of the biggest components of it, and I almost feel like not enough people are talking about it, but it's the reasoning element and the pattern matching aspects of it that are truly unique and different than
Yeah,
previous technologies and even how we've thought of AI in the past in some ways. And I think that just feeds into it. I had not thought about the personalization in terms of the that way where it's you're almost training your replacement on that side. And then there's this element of consent to a certain extent. If it can effectively read my mind and sell me XYZ, and I'm like, if it's so tailored to where I'm just like spending money left and right and you just can't control it, that can lead to some negative consequences and scenarios as well, to where it's almost like dystopian in a sense.
absolutely. Who's now, is it the platform's responsibility to help you manage your budget? Is it like I know that there's some betting sites that say bet responsibly, and there's all of the kind of safety aspect to that, right?
Yeah.
But I
But
don't
they're
know.
gamifying it. Yeah.
I don't know about digital kind of marketplace sites that say, hey, you spent a lot with us this month, and we know you so well that we know what you want to buy, and we'll put
Yeah.
it in front of you, but be careful. You should buy
Th-
responsibly instead of drinking responsibly. I
we just created a new product that knows your budget and when to stop spending and turning off the personalization
exactly
as it goes.
a good one.
There
Well done, Matt.
Yeah, there will be lots of business models that come out of this. I think that will be an interesting. That's what I'm really excited for. I love the strategy side of things. I'm really excited to see what type of business models emerge from this that are novel and maybe things we haven't thought of before.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Just as there's give it the data, ask it, meaning your this new form of software to come up with a new marketing strategy.
Hmm.
It'll be creative, right? This is hallucination for a good reason. It'll be creative. It'll create a new product category or a new service level, a new in my case, a family loyalty program that they hadn't thought of, and
Hmm.
there you go.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's creative. So this is, I think, maybe a point to uh, to just bring home one more time. It's not that it's, this stuff used to be very logically oriented, where you deterministically coded it. Now you could say, here's your objective, and
hmm,
the AI agent, and again, we're moving from co-pilot to autopilot to autonomous agent, that you give it to goal and it'll plan out the work and it'll do some of the tasks or pass some of the tasks on to its counterpart and come up with something creative. Yeah, I think I love thinking strategically how this is going to be applied. Probably because I don't want to be on the other side of it too. I want to
yeah.
be on the uh, on the front foot here, but we
Yeah,
will.
message
This is going to
to all
play out.
the listeners there. Definitely be thinking about how this is impacting your space, how you can lean into it versus let it happen to you. I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from this discussion today, Alan. And yeah, I had high hopes for the chat and it definitely lived up to it. But where can people find you, Alan? You mentioned the book Agentware. I think that's on Amazon as well, but where can people find that if they want to go deeper?
It is. It's on Amazon, so you can get a Kindle e-version or a paperback version over at Amazon. Self-published it. I needed to get it out on a timely basis, so that's their Agentware, and I'm also available on LinkedIn. My first name, last name at X, pretty much everywhere where I can grab Alan Wunsche, I have, and over at Agentware AI, because I took the book and said, let's help some organizations figure out the right way to go with this new technology. And so that's where I take some calls over at Agentware AI these days as well.
Nice. I really enjoyed the chat. Thanks for being on, Alan.
I really enjoyed it, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Talking AI podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. We love those. For more info on Talking AI, visit talkingaipodcast.com.